Hello everyone, this is Alekhya, Assistant Professor in Cybersecurity Department. So today we are going to discuss about cybersecurity principles. So for developing an organization or to secure the data or to improve the processes securely in an organization, some cybersecurity principles are very important and they have to be maintained and they have to be upgraded. So for that, we are having some important cybersecurity principles. So our topic is on cybersecurity principles. So here, the UK internet industry and government recognized the need to develop a series of guiding principles for improving the online security of the ISPs. So ISPs are nothing but internet service providers where customers and limit the rise in cyber attacks. So by using these cyber security principles, so they want to guide the employees in the organization, or they want to guide the organizations itself to decrease to maintain some guiding principles of cyber security and to decrease the cyber attacks. So for every organization or every industry or anyone who is connected to the internet, they have to maintain some cyber security principles. So cyber security for these purposes encompasses the protection of essential information, processes and systems connected or stored online. So which are connected to the internet. Whereas the essential where the protection of essential information, processes and systems, so which are in the organization and that are connected to the internet, so with a broad view across the people, so which are connected to so many people, technical and physical domains. So they have to maintain some protection for these things. So these principles, they have recognized that the ISPs and other service providers, anyone, internet users and UK government all have a role in minimizing and mitigating the cyber threats inherent in using the internet. And here these guiding principles have been developed to respond to its challenge by providing a consistent approach. So they have received some response to this challenge by providing some consistent approach to help inform, educate and protect ISPs, internet service providers, customers from online crimes. So they want to save the ISPs, customers, users, and they want to help them, educate them, inform them about the online crimes. And these guiding principles are aspiration, developed and delivered as a partnership between government and ISPs. So internet service providers. So these guidelines are acts like a aspiration, developed and delivered partnership, as a partnership, or they're trying to relate both of them, government and ISPs, to safeguard from cyber attacks. So they recognize that ISPs have different set of customers. So they are having some different set of customers, offer different levels of support and services to protect these customers from cyber threats. So they have recognized that. So ISPs, they are having specially some set of customers and they offer different levels of support and services to protect those customers from cyber attacks. So next one, so these are some cyber principles that were described. So first one, economy of mechanism and fail-safe defaults, least privilege, open design, complete mediation, separation of privilege, least common mechanism, psychological acceptability, work factor and compromise recording. So these are the main cyber security principles that they have followed. So first one, economy of mechanism. So what is economy of mechanism? So this principle, this is the one of the first principle which states that security mechanism should be as simple as simple and small as possible. So they have to be very simple and they have to be they are very small as possible. Okay, the next one, the economy of mechanism principle simplifies the design and implementation of security mechanisms. So they have to be like, if there is any principle, that has to be used very simply. So if the design and implementation are simple and small, fewer possibilities exist for errors. So if they are very simple and if the design and implementation are very simple and small, then there will be very less errors. And next one, the checking and testing process is simple. So if they are small and simple, so the checking complexity also less. The testing process is less complicated, so that fewer components need to be tested, so that the testing time will be decreased. So first one, economy of mechanism. So in these interfaces between security modules are the aspects area which should be as simple as possible. So the interfaces between the security modules are which they are the suspect area that has to be very simple. And before interface modules often make implicit assumptions about input or output parameters or the current system state. And next one, if the any of these assumptions are wrong, so above assumptions are wrong, any of them, so the module's actions may produce unexpected results. So the actions of the modules may be unexpected. And last one, simple security framework facilities. Simple security framework facilities, its understanding by developers and users and enables the efficient development and verification of enforcement methods for it. So here, the simple security framework facilities, so nothing but the framework facilities which are very simple and understanding by developers and users. So who are using the internet? The developers and the users, and enables the efficient development and verification of enforcement methods. So they try to decrease the make the methods or developments very simple. So second one, fail-safe defaults. So what is fail-safe defaults principle? So it states that the default configuration of a system, the default configuration of a system should have a conservative protection scheme. So the default the daily process of configuration of a system should be the conservative protection scheme. This principle also restricts how privileges are initialized when a subject or object is created. So this principle mainly restricts how privileges, how they are initialized when a subject or object is created. So if there is any subject or object which is created through online, how they have to be initialized that particular topic. And next one, whenever access, privileges or rights or some security related attributes is not explicitly granted, they are not explicitly granted, it should not be granted access to that object, that particular object. And for example, we are having, if we will add a new user to an operating system, if we want to add new user to an operating system, the default group of users already which are in the group users should have a fewer access rights to files and services. Only few have the rights and accesses to rights and services to that particular files. And next one, least privilege. So this principle states that a user should only have those privileges that need to complete his task. So only the a user should only have those privileges. So he has only some works that need to be complete his tasks. So not all users have that particular work. So its primary function is to control the assignment of rights granted to the user. So user will have some work, user will have some access, manager will have some access. So like that. So for every person there will be only certain access, not everyone having every accesses. So this least privilege is nothing but control the access to the that particular work. So this means that if the boss demands root access to a Unix system, that you administrator, he or she should not be given that right unless he or she has a task that requires such levels of access. So not everyone has to, not to everyone, we shouldn't give the access. So not everyone. So for employee, for manager, for user, for customer, so for everyone, we should not give all the accesses. So the accesses should be limited. Only some. So what is the need? So if it is very compulsory for that access, at that time only the access has to be given. So if possible, the elevated rights of a user identity should be removed as soon as those rights are no longer needed. So if the roots of if the identity of the user has been deleted, so the rights also has to be declined. So the rights for that particular user has also to be declined. So that is nothing but least privilege. And next one, open design. So this principle states that the security of a mechanism should not depend on the secrecy of its design or implementation. See here, the security of the mechanism. Security of a mechanism. So if there is any mechanism that we are using in a system, that should not be it should not be depend on the secrecy of its design or implementation. So the security of a mechanism should be different from the design or implementation. So there should not be any relation among them. So it is nothing but open design. So it suggests, this principle mainly suggests that complexity does not add security. So if you make the system very complex, if you add the complex security things to that particular system, it does not add security. So this principle is the opposite of security through obscurity. So it suggests that complexity does not add security. So whereas this principle is opposite of the approach which is known as security to obscurity. And this principle not only applies to information such as passwords or cryptographic systems, but also to other computer security related operations. So this principle, which is main, not only applies to the information. It should not be only applies to the information like the credential information like passwords or cryptographic systems. So it also applies to other computer security related operations. So here we are having example like DVD player and content scrambling systems, CSS, content scrambling systems protection. And the CSS is a cryptographic algorithm that protects the DVD movie discs from unauthorized copying. So if you are having DVD player means, so if you want to protect that particular DVD player with some confidential information, so that can be done by using CSS, content scrambling system. So which is nothing but one of the algorithm that protects the DVD movies discs from unauthorized copying. So that cannot be copied to another player. Next one, complete mediation. So complete mediation is nothing but this principle states the complete mediation restricts the catching of information. So complete mediation should not be done. So it complete mediation, it restricts the catching of information, which often leads to simpler implications of mechanisms. So it mainly leads to simpler implications of mechanisms. So the idea of this principle is that access to every object must be checked for compliance with a protection scheme to ensure that they are allowed. And next one, as a consequence, there should be some difference of performance improvement techniques which save the details of previous authorization checks. So previous authorization checks. So since the permissions can change over time, So the permission also has to change for time to time. So here complete mediation is nothing but it restricts the catching of information, which often leads to simpler. So it mainly restricts the catching of information, which leads to the simpler implications of mechanisms. So whenever someone tries to access an object or the system, anything, the system should authenticate the access rights associated with that subject. See here, whenever some third person when try to access an object, the system should be authenticate the access rights. They have to authenticate the access rights accessed with that subject. And here the subject's access rights are verified every time, once at the initial access and for subsequent accesses. So before giving the accesses, it has to be checked. So the system assumes that the same access rights should be accepted for that subject and object. So for the subject and objects, the same access should be accepted. And next one, the operating system should mediate all and every access to an object. So the operating system which we are using in the system should mediate. So it should act as a mediate all and every access to the object. So for example, we are having an online banking website. It should require users to sign in again after a certain period, like we can say 20 minutes has elapsed. So for online banking, what it will do? So for after some time, the sign in will be declined. Again, we have to sign in after some time. So it is nothing but after 20 minutes, like that. It is one of the example for complete mediation. And next one, separation privilege. So what is separation privilege? So it's this principle mainly states that a system should grant access to permission. So it should grant access to permission based on more than one condition being satisfied. More than being on one condition being satisfied. So this principle may also be restrictive because it limits access to system entities. So according to the separation of privilege principle, it gives access. So here it limits the access to system entities itself. So thus, before privilege is granted, so before giving work is granted, more than 2 verifications should be performed. 2 authentication verifications should be performed before giving the work granted. So for example, the change to roots. The suit to roots is nothing but the change to roots. So we should have 2 conditions must they have to be met. So first one, the user must know the root password. The user must know the root password. And next one, the user must be in the right group wheel. So he has to be in the right group. So these are the 2 conditions to satisfy to give the access. And next one, least common mechanism. So in this principle states that in systems with multiple users, if a system is there with multiple users, the mechanism allowing resources shared by more than one user should be minimized as much as possible. So this has to be minimized as much as possible. So this principle may also be restrictive because of the following things. For example, if there is a need to be accessed a file or a application by more than one user, then users should be users should use separate channels to access these resources, which helps to prevent from unseen consequences that should cause security problems. So here limit the sharing of resources. So resources sharing should be very limit. And psychological acceptability. Psychological acceptability is nothing but this principle states that a security mechanism should not make the resource more complicated to access if the security mechanisms were not present. So if the security mechanisms were not present, that should not make the resources more complicated. So make the resources simple and make the mechanism simple. So this principle mainly recognizes the human element in a computer security. It mainly recognizes the human element in computer security. So if security related software or computer systems are too complicated to configure, they are very complicated to configure, maintain or operate, the user will not employ the necessary security mechanisms. So they cannot use the security mechanisms completely. So for example, so if your password is matched during a password change process, so the password changing problem should state why it is denied rather than giving a cryptographic error message. So if they are using any if it is accepting the wrong password, it has to be given some error message. If it is not giving, means there is some problem in that. So at the same time, applications should not impart unnecessary information that may lead to compromising security. So if there is any applications that should not impart unnecessary information, if they are not giving, if they are not restricting the unnecessary information that lead to some compromise in security, that has to be observed. An example, when we enter a wrong password. So if you have entered any wrong password, the system should only tell us that the user ID or password was incorrect. So it should not tell us that the only password was wrong, as this gives the attacker information. So see here, if you have entered any wrong password, the system should tell us the ID or password is incorrect, not only the password is incorrect. So that we have to be so if it is telling that only either password or ID is in it should if it is telling that the password was incorrect, so the system was compromised with some so the system was compromised by some attacks or anything. And next one, work factor. So this principle mainly states that the cost of circumventing a security mechanism should be compared with the resources of a potential attacker. So when designing a security scheme, it should be very important to make a note that work factor principle is very important, where it states the cost of circumventing a security mechanism. So in some cases, the cost of circumventing is nothing but it is known as some work factor, can be easily calculated. So it is one which is measured. So in other words, the work factor is a common cryptographic measure, some cryptographic measure which is used to determine the strength of a given cipher. So they mainly used for determining the strength of a given cipher. So it does not map directly to cyber security. So this work factor, it does not directly map with the cyber security, but the overall concept does apply. Overall, the working security scheme that can apply for the work factor. So for example, if you are having, suppose number of experiments need to try all possible four-factor password. So we are having 24 power 4, which is 3,31,776 times. If they have tried, means it will get. The potential attacker must try each experimental password at a terminal. So one must consider a 4-character password to be satisfactory. So in another hand, if the potential hacker could use some astronomical computer capable of trying a million password per second. So a 4-letter password would be a minor barrier for a potential intruder. So some attacker, it is very small task to break that password. So it is nothing but work factor. So this work factor should not be very simple, and it is mapped to overall the concept of the security scheme. And next one, compromise recording. So this principle mainly states that sometimes it is more desirable to record the details of intruder than to adopt a more sophisticated measure to prevent it. So mainly to decrease to mitigate the cyber attacks. And for example, the server in an office network may keep logs for all accesses to files. So all emails sent and received, and all browsing sessions on the website. So another example is that internet connected surveillance cameras are a typical example of compromising recording system that can be placed to protect a building. So it is nothing but recording everything. Recording everything is also one of the main principle. So which if there is any attack happens, they can be retrieved. So they can retrieve, and what happens we can see visually. So these are the 10 important cyber security principles, and I have referred these topics from this website. So what are the principles we have discussed? Economy of mechanism, fail-safe defaults, least privilege, open design, complete mediation, separation of privilege, least common mechanism, psychological acceptability, work factor, and compromise recording. So these are the 10 principles that has given by the UK internet industry and government. So these guiding principles are very important for improving the online security for the internet service providers. So these are the 10 principles. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.